So mine goes to the shoes,
Same deal. I have playing classes, going to last week in person. Now, why were they saying like $8,700?
No, because we had.
No.
Oh, he was like
I was looking at these.
Oh,
I was looking at how much. And he was like, why would you buy
Well, one of them was Jeremy training for something. She's got to train on the first time.
So all you did was just take and bring the classes at a time.
No, that I believe, I just tried to say so.
That would be hard. I was making like $80,000 a year, living with his parents. You know, and he was find out was at 22, 23.
Wow.
Okay. Picking up where we left off, I was talking about simplification. I'm on page 402. And the next rule we get is conjunction. Again, a very easy to follow one. Seems, gosh, we don't even have to think about this, but it is an inference. If you have P and you have Q, you have, voila, P and Q. Pretty easy. Conjunction. Can you screw that up? Yes, you can. Be aware. Don't treat horseshoes as if they're part of a conjunction. And don't treat disjuncts as conjunctions. If I have P or Q, that doesn't mean I have P, and it doesn't mean I have Q. It means I have P or Q, I don't know which. I might have both. But it doesn't mean that I can validly conclude that I have P or Q separately. I have P or Q. That's what I'm giving. It's kind of interesting. If you think about it, the disjunctive syllogism says, well, if you know you have P or Q, but you don't have P, then you know you have Q. But if you have P or Q, you can't assume that you have one or the other one. That's not given to you. On the other hand, if I have P and Q, I have both of them. And so that's easy. Addition. This is the weird one. I talked about how it's only going to be in logic books that you see it. I don't know why we have it. It is valid. So if I have P, guess what? I have P or anything you pick. Because I actually have P. And or all the rest of the things you add with an or doesn't change what you have because you have P, as long as you really have P. Right? Batman has Robin. So Batman has Robin, or Batman has issues, or he
Both of those
has,
statements are true.
or he has Blue Jays, or he has Miami Seagulls, I don't know. Miami Seagulls? Dolphins.
Yeah, the Dolphins.
Dolphins. They have
Yeah,
Dolphins.
if they chose Seagulls as a team for any sport.
Seagulls is the Seattle team, right? Seattle Seagulls. Oh,
Then you
Seahawks.
got the New Orleans Pelicans basketball team, the real team.
New Orleans Pelicans. You know, the Elmendorf team used to be the Penguins, which is annoying since we don't have penguins here.
The what?
Penguins.
Whose team?
Elmendorf. And the since they've updated the commissary, they don't have them anymore, but they used to have pictures of penguins because that was their mascot on the Elmendorf Penguins.
Huh.
And people do think that we have penguins in Alaska, but we do not. We do not.
I used to tell people that I had a pet penguin, and you had to be very careful because polar bears, it's the main source of food, so you have to be very careful because they'll come down and
Penguins at Illinois, because my parents always shopped at the commissary on Fort Rich.
Oh yeah, we used to go there too. Yeah.
That's where there was.
Do you know how you can catch a polar bear with a saw and a can of peas?
Put the peas and the peas in the middle and saw around the pole.
Well, you saw a hole in the ice, You sprinkle the peas around the hole, and when the polar bear comes to take a pee, you kick him in the ice hole.
Wow. I'm gonna use that one.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not my fault.
My dad used to tell it, it was in a forest and you burn a hole, fill it with ashes,
The ash hole.
and it was a bear.
That's an interesting variant. I never heard that one.
No, that's how my dad used to do it.
That's awesome.
Okay. So addition. P, you can validly conclude P or anything. Pretty weird. Is there a misapplication of that? Yes, you bet there is. You could find somebody doing something. If I have as my premise P and Q, then R and S, I can't just do away with part of that conditional statement and say or T. P and Q or T. No, that's not there. Can't do that. So you can be creative and be wrong. So constructive dilemma, this is the hardest one to remember, and keep all that in your head at once. It's almost like trying to remember a social security number because it's so long. If P then Q, and if R then S, but P or R, therefore Q or S.
So in the original portion of it, it needs to be and, right?
Right, right. You're conjoining two conditional statements, and then you have a disjunct which contains the antecedents of both
statements,
of the conditional statements,
which
and then
needs
the
to be
conclusion is the consequence of both of those statements. So we've added all of those, so now we have the 8 implication rules. So you know the next thing is to start doing some exercises using those. The first set of exercises, 8D on page 407, they're relatively easy because all they're asking for you to give is the justification, and in this case it's not even the steps, it's just the rule that you're using. So problem 1, you're looking at if P then Q and if R then S, but P or R, therefore Q or S. Notice that's really constructive dilemma, in the actual form of the argument, so not difficult at all. CD is the answer. Problem 2,
simplification.
simplification. Does everybody see that, though? If we go too fast, we could lose some folks on the dust here, so let's not do that. We're on page 407. Simplification. It might not be intuitive for some folks, but if you're looking at that, notice that you have a more complex looking conjunction, but it is a conjunction. The main operator in that premise is the and so if I've got if P then R and if Q then R, I have if P then R. So you're saying you have both of those, both sides of those. Number 3, T or U, but not the case P. 3, oh wait, what do we got here? Oh,
Therefore,
okay,
T or U
conjunction.
and not P.
We've got 2 premises, T or U, that's 1. Second premise, not P. They conjoin them, and that's the conclusion. So that's just conjunction. C-O-N, I usually abbreviate it C-O-N-J, that's what they're using, right? Conjunction. Problem 4, you have R. Conclusion R or whatever the heck, and there it is. Addition. I don't think that one is really a good argument to use, though, in most situations. People would just decide that maybe you need medication. And if you do need medication, I'm sorry for making such a terrible joke. Actually, there's nothing wrong with that. I have some pretty good medications myself. I don't think I need them, but the doctor says, here, take some of this. So, yeah.
Hopefully there's not too many doctors like that.
Pardon?
Hopefully there's not too many doctors like that. Just giving you things because they can.
Well, I think they're good doctors. I don't know what they're giving me, but my wife seems to think it's okay.
As long as she says it's okay, then it's good.
Right. Remember my advice at the beginning of class, if you're a young man, marry the smartest woman that will have you and then do what she says. You'll live longer, you'll be wealthier, you know, all those good things. The sad thing is she won't live as happy a life as she would have otherwise. It's just statistics. Okay. So you see how that one goes. What about 15 on page 408? What goes in the answer there? Premise 1.
CD.
Yep. Constructive dilemma. Good eye. So then the next section, part 2, these are now examples where they give you the justification, including where it's from, but you have to figure out what would have actually have been the conclusion there. I notice they're sly about it. They didn't give you the actual conclusion in the argument. You have to figure it out. In the first one, of course, they give you the answer, T or Q.
But they give you the rule.
And they do give you the rule. But yeah, they give you the rule. So for number 2, if M then P and K, and simplification is the rule you would be using. So if M then P,
Or it could be K.
or it could be K. But I would say normally it's the left side in simplification. Isn't that what they showed us in the
Sure,
rule?
it's both.
They gave us both?
Said if you have P and Q, then
You
you
can
have
have P or Q.
and you have Q.
So you could go either way. We're a happy camper either way. So number 3, P or Q, 2, S or T. If you use conjunction, you would have P or Q and S or T. You see how that would look? Easy. Number 4, not the case S or T. Addition. Well, that one, you could have stuck anything you like there as, so you would have not the case S or T, or
P.
totalifinsterness. I don't, whatever. Totalifinsterness.
Does that mean whatever? I don't know.
That would break things up, wouldn't it? Which problem was that? 4. So 5, simplification, that would probably just be P, although yes, you could go either way. 6, R or S, and if P then Q. Step 2, premise S or Q. And we have conjunction, so I would have
X or P.
that whole thing, right? So I'm conjoining them, right?
And you would definitely want to put those brackets in so that way you can understand which one is the major.
Right.
What do you call it?
Brackets or another set of
Braces.
parentheses. Doesn't seem to be. How do I spell my name? Phew, I remembered my new password. It's asterisks all the way.
You guys have to change it like every 90 days or something?
They won't let me use different asterisks.
My password is always something, 1, 2, 3, 4.
My friend's is her name, and then it just goes 1 through 10.
That would get me confused because I wouldn't remember what her name was.
My password is foolproof. It's like one of those ones you get when you get new Wi-Fi that like has like 10 letters in a row. No one's hacking me.
We look at step 3, or the next thing here. My premium trial is expired. Oh. All the Finsterness. You'll remember that from the song. This was a very popular song in the U.S., wasn't it? I don't remember the music was ever beat. They're vampires. Hunts and vampires. Yeah, the damsel in distress. In this case, she's where she wants to be. Isn't that a famous American song?
Everyone's the dudes together at the same time. Was it 94? Was it? I don't know.
What's the words in English? Bright eyes. Sternkind is Star Child. It's the most famous vampire in Germany. that was fun. I just did that for. Little stuff like that wakes me up.
Wow. That song is older than I am. That song is older than I am. 83.
So let's do some problems. Ewigkeit. Ewigkeit beginnt bei Gott. So, section 3, they say use the 8 implication rules to complete the proofs. Provide the justification for each step that you derive. They give us the first problem. And they solve it all the way, right? So that's the answer there. They use simplification and modus ponens. So they just use 2 steps in that one. What about number 2? If R, then P or Q.
Are we using all 8 implication rules, or are we just using the last
Yes,
4?
we're using all 8 implication rules in this section. So the first one we were doing 4, then we added 4 more rules, so now we're doing 8. And then once we're used to these, then we move on and start adding the replacement rules. And then you get all the way to the point where you have all the replacement rules, and that's where we'll be doing the test at that point. Fine. So, S or P or Q. Not the case S. Therefore, not the case R. So, this is what we're looking for. This is our conclusion. Here's R here. So what we're looking for is modus tollens, which would give the name that we need not the case P or Q. Could I get not the case P or Q?
Yeah, modus tollens, right?
Oh, it would help if I had written it correctly. Sure.
Oh.
I was gonna have trouble otherwise. So, not the case S means that it is the case that I have not the case P or Q. And how did I get that? Just, well, no, it's S or not P or Q, not S, disjunctive syllogism.
Yeah.
Tells me that I can get that. So I have not the case this,
So you have no
not the case R, modus tollens on 1 and 4. So far, those are both rules that I had last time. How about 3? So I'm looking for if R then P, if R then P. Okay. So I'm going to have to use hypothetical syllogism to get to this from these 2. But in order to get this out of here, I'd have to use simplification to take this one out. So if M and P can come out of one through simplification. And now, if I have, if R then M, if M then P, I have if R then P, and that's hypothetical syllogism using 2 and 3. How about number 7? And 4. Not the case P. Then Q. Or not the case S. M and not R. Therefore, Q or not S. Q or not S is right here. But that one's so easy, why did I write it down? This is modus ponens. Just 1 and 2.
Well, you have.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Oh, I made a mistake, didn't I? This is not that. Woohoo, they threw a loop for us. What I gotta do first? I have to create this, because the difference here is this is M or not P. And what I was looking at was M or not R. Wow. So I need M. Yeah, M and R. So I can take the M out, simplification. On 2. And I can add whatever I like to it. So M or not P, addition. 3. Now, I have
I am modus ponens.
modus.
Mm.
About 14, next page. So I want to get P and S. You can see P is sitting right there. I could just take that out. P, simplification.
You can say P or R.
And 2. Here's S sitting there. But I need to add R. Remember, when you say add this way, always use the disjunct. Don't use a conjunction. Addition. On 3. And now I have 5S. Modus ponens. Using 1 and 4. And last but not least, I have to conjoin them to make it look just like that with P first.
Or 3.
3 and 5. 27. Not P. N, L. 2. Not Q, N. Not the case. K, if and only if. J. 3. Did I write that down right?
What's that?
Did I get it right? So S and not Q.
So you could say that, not P, you could say not P through simplification of 1, and then you could say not Q through simplification of 2. That way you can get not P and not Q through conjunction of 4 and 5.
That gives me this.
That gives, yeah, because of modus ponens.
Modus ponens using 3 and 6. Not P or R. I have not P.
So then you
let's
can
just
say
go
not P, then R,
or R,
because of
addition.
addition. Then you can say through modus ponens you have S and M.
Notice this interesting thing. Some of the inference rules will always have 2 lines that you refer to,
Mm-hmm.
like modus ponens, modus tollens, disjunctive syllogism, constructive dilemma, hypothetical syllogism, conjunction. But simplification and addition only have 1, like here. Just kind of interesting. So step 9,
Is S and M because of modus ponens.
S and M, modus ponens.
And then you have S because of simplification.
Step am I using 7 and 8? S, simplification.
And then you have S and not Q because of conjunction of 5 and 10.
Used to shop at a 5 and 10. That became what? Kresge's?
Woolworth.
Woolworth's.
So on number 7, where you have not P or R. I'm getting not P or R. Oh, I see it up here.
Here.
P.
This whole thing, this is, if this, then this. But we have this right here. So modus ponens tells us, since I have this and this, I have this. We have some word puzzles, word problems. Problem 3, 3D movies are making large profits. Like Moses, Elijah, those are large profits.
See what you did there.
Sorry. If 3D movies are making large profits, then movie companies are producing what people want to see. And the movie companies are creating jobs. Either movie ticket sales are going up, or it is not the case that movie companies are producing what people want to see, and the movie companies are creating jobs. But movie ticket sales are not going up. If 3D movies are not making large profits and movie ticket sales are not going up, then Hollywood will start making different kinds of movies, and movie companies will start being more creative. Thus, Hollywood will start making different kinds of movies. And you can use P, M, J, S, H, and C. That looks like it would be a great quiz question, wouldn't it? How would you hate me if I did that one?
Well, you gave us the first answer to the other quiz.
I did. The other one was all done even before I finished giving you the quiz. This one is page 412. Number 3. That's mean and rotten. If 3D movies are making large profits, the movie companies are producing what people want to see, and the movie companies are creating jobs. So, if P, then M and J, right? S or not the case P. Oh, no, that's pockets. You could figure that out. That would be fun.
It makes a lot more sense to me when you put it in context.
That's
With
why
a
it's
real-
here.
With a real
Right,
life.
right.
Because just looking at this, I'm gonna be honest, I don't understand at all.
But this helps.
This absolutely helps.
That's why it's there. Not to annoy you, but
Still annoying.
you have to keep it. The logic is one of those subjects where you can easily just go into abstract puzzles and totally forget to make it pertinent to everyday life. So, I remember seeing, like the room full of chalkboards and the professors, just doing the proof and doing the proof and doing the proof. And he's standing up on the ladder, finishing the proof way up here, and meanwhile the janitor comes in and starts erasing. Sees the janitor erase. Almost almost solved Fermat's last theorem. So replacement rules. So the neat thing about replacement rules is these are not inferences. These are things that have been proven to be equivalent to other statements, so that you basically have just two ways of saying the exact same thing. One of the heroes of this is De Morgan. Augustus De Morgan. I have a little biographical insert, page 415. Notice the picture they give of him makes him look as ugly as every other picture they've had, including the woman we saw not too long ago. Those are even the same glasses she was wearing, isn't it? Aren't they? Glasses is plural. Glasses are plural. Remember in Russian class, we were all puzzled when we found out that to walk is popeshkom, which is singular. We were all puzzled. How come you go in the singular when you're walking?
What do you mean by singular?
Well, and then the professor looked at us and he said, well, you do the same thing in English. When you go somewhere, you go by foot. That's right. You go by foot. You go by foot. But actually, you can't just go by foot. You have to go by feet. But we don't say by feet. We say you go somewhere by foot. Remember, our one comedian said, actually, everywhere is walking distance if you have the time. So Augustus De Morgan. I think he was he American? Doesn't say where he was born, does it? What a crappy biography. So anyway, De Morgan gives us two replacement rules. Lord, if I'm ever remembered in history, let it be for something more than two replacement rules. So, we have not the case P and Q. That turns out to be, now he uses 4 dots in here, I'm going to use the tribar instead. Not the case P or not the case Q. Does that make sense? Whenever you say, it's not the case that I have both P and Q, that's logically equivalent to saying, I don't have either P or Q. Does that make sense? So, if I put something for P, these are little vegetables. Little veggies. Q. Kumquats. I don't know how you spell kumquats. I love the sound of it. Kumquats. Are green. Just for grins. So it's not the case that peas are little vegetables and kumquats are green. So here I'm saying it's not the case that both of these, that's equivalent to, it's not the case P or it's not the case Q, right? So when I'm saying it's not the case, both of these, you could have one. You just couldn't have both. You might not have either, right? So it's the same as saying either I don't have P or I don't have Q. Remember, inclusive or, I could have neither of these, right? And by the way, if I say it's not the case that peas are little vegetables, and this one. So either it's not the case that peas are little vegetables, or it's not the case that kumquats are green. What color are kumquats anyway?
I think they're orange.
Yeah, they're orange. So that's actually true, even though I misspelled kumquats. I think it's with a K,
Yep. But they're orange.
but they're orange. Little things. I love the sound of kumquats. Doesn't it just flow trippingly off your tongue? Kumquats. It's almost like onomatopoeia. Or hyperbole. Isn't it? Hyperbole. You're not having as much fun as I thought.
You know, I'm just
Well,
struggling, so.
so we could go from this to this, or this to this, back and forth. But notice we also have another one that looks similar, but is actually quite different. Not the case P or Q, and that is equivalent to saying not the case P and not the case Q. So in this case, it's not the case that I have both P and Q. I don't have either of them. So notice it's not the case P or Q. Neither of them are there. So in English, any European language, I suppose, we can say this, and it's logically equivalent to this. And we could, by the way, prove that with the truth table, put it across, and you'll see that you get exactly the same truth possibilities for every condition with both sides. So these are logically equivalent. You could say, but you can't go this way, or this way, or this way. You can go left or right, or right or left, with each of them, but not, right? And these are referred to as De Morgans. And you don't have to say which, just say De Morgans.
It's as if removing the parentheses converts the and to an or.
Mm-hmm. Because here the negation sign has power over the entire parenthetical statement, right? Same thing here. Here, the negation sign is individually in front. And so notice, I don't want to confuse folks, but what if I had not the case, not P and Q? What would De Morgans allow me to get from that?
P or not Q.
P and Q.
P or not Q.
P.
So I would have not P or
Double negative.
not Q.
No, you have P or not Q.
Right, because the double negative,
Makes it P or not Q.
so remember, this is just giving us the rule, the thought pattern, but you can invest that with all the richness of all sorts of possibilities. As you will see in the book as we go. And double negation, by the way, timely, because that's the very next one that we had,
Oh.
replacement rule. It says that if I have I have P, that is logically equivalent to not P. So what about not P?
Not P is not P.
Not P is equivalent to not.
Yeah.
This is just playing with your head now, right?
Multiplication.
Yeah. So that's cool. And double negation, just abbreviated DN, whenever you need to use them. You can screw up double negation. There's an example of a misapplication of double negation in the middle of the page, page 416. So if I have Q or R, and then I apply double negation, notice I have to keep the two negation signs together. You can't spread them into a parenthetical statement. Okay. Next one comes right out of math, commutation. It's even called that in math, right? Turn to the Greg and Ben brothers, but they left. Oops, shouldn't have mentioned that. I'll delete that from the video if anyone complains. But commutation. There's two variants on this, because you can either do this with conjunction or disjunct, but don't get them mixed up. So if I have P or Q, guess what? It's no difference from saying Q or P. Just commute them, right? Same thing with P and Q. No difference between Q and P.
This or that, that or this and that,
Mhm.
that and this.
It's just like simplification, conjunction. This is one of those things where you can see that what they're trying to get at is what are the absolute basic inferences and logical relationships that we can imagine, right? Yes, you can screw that up. You cannot use commutation with a conditional statement, a horseshoe. And I've seen it. People will say, oh, if P then Q. Wow, but I need it the other way, so I'll go Q then P. And they say commutation. And no, that's wrong. Can't do that. There are relationships we'll see that we can use here, but that is not right. So, the next one, association. Again, just like in mathematics, you've got parentheses around addition. You know, if I'm doing 2 plus 3 plus 5, what's wrong with that? You have to add parentheses, right? But does it make a difference where I put them? No. It does, however, if one of them is different. Then it will be different. So, association is where I have P or Q or R. That's equivalent to P or Q or R. You can just move the parentheses. Usually you have to do it can't just jockey the elements around. So what I wanted to get was P and R together. I couldn't just go P or R or Q. I would have to commute this first. And then I could put P or R together. And notice that this works with a conjunction as well. But of course, be careful you don't get those mixed up with disjunction and conjunction together. So the misapplications of it you see at the bottom of the page. Be careful. Remember, like goes with like. You can't use association with those that are not like, right? Distribution. This looks like mathematics too with distribution in math. If I have P, N, Q, or R, that's equivalent to saying I have P and Q, or I have P and R. Likewise, if I have P or Q and R, that's equivalent to saying I have P or Q and I have P or R. And that's distribution. Can you screw that one up too? Yes, you can screw all this up. But we have the first 5 replacement rules then. De Morgan's 2 variations, commutation 2 variations, distribution 2 variations, association 2 variations, and double negation. So we can start applying them. Exercise 8E, page 422. They give us the first one, not the case S and R, 2 S, not the case S or not the case R. What did they do here? They used De Morgan's. You can see how they gave you the answer. Problem 2, S or P becomes P or S. How did they do that? Commutation. Everybody's got commutation. 3, R or S or P can become R or S, or P, association. Problem 4, P and S or Q becomes P and S, or P and Q, distribution. What's this one? Number 10, you have not Q becomes Q, that's double negation. Could go either way. How about 11? If we're using distribution on number 1, P and S or if S then R, right? So we're using distribution on that, right? have to bring the P in there just as we were doing it in here. This is a conjunction, so it looks just like this one. Now notice this is a disjunct like Q or R, right? Except that I have if S then R, or if Q then L. So that's what this looks like. Well, I want to make it look like this, so the P has to go P N if S then R, or. So I'm going to have to put brackets around this. So that's what that would look like. Distribution on this. So notice we're up to using 8 implication rules and 5 replacement rules. When we get to the test, we're using 8 implication rules and all the replacement rules, so we're almost at the test. Should we do some of these? Yes? We'll do number 1, follow along with what they're doing. These are the premises. This is the conclusion, not the case P. Where could we, here's P here. So this is the only place where P is. To get it out, we would need not the case Q and R. Here's Q and R. I could get not the case Q and R if I got not the case M if and only if N. Ah, okay, so here's not the case S and L, so modus tollens will give me not the case M if and only if N. Modus tollens from 4 and 1, 6. That gives me not the case Q and R. Again, modus tollens 2 and 5. That gives me not the case P. And 6. Again, modus tollens. Number 4. If S, then L or this is what we wanna get out of it, L or M? Which I can see right there. Remember, if I get that by itself, I can just add whatever I want. Although here's not R also. So we might be able to get it that way. Could we get S out of here any place all by itself?
Can we do like a reversed, well, because you have S or P and S or Q, so you could you say S or parentheses P and Q, parentheses? I just don't, I don't, trying to figure out which rule that would go under.
Yeah, we could,
Reverse the distribution.
we could
model.
use
reverse
constructive dilemma. If we have the two conditional statements set up correctly, because this is the consequent of this
Mm-hmm.
conditional statement, and this is the consequent of this one. So if we can join these two, S then L or M, and can join that with this, P and Q, then not R. And if we could get S or P and Q, S or P and Q, and S or S. So what we could do is take this and get S or,
It would be parentheses P and Q, right?
P and Q. Right? And how did we get this? This is distribution from 3. Right, because distribution
Distribution says that P or in parentheses Q and R is the same as in parentheses P or Q and in parentheses P or R. So that's,
I erased my copy of distribution. Yeah, so we're using distribution on this, because I have S or P conjoined with S or Q, right? So that's the same as saying, well, I have S or P and Q because of the conjunction, right? Distribution. You see that on the,
mhm.
you rewrite distribution?
Line 4 is a result of a conjunction, is that right?
Distribution goes P and Q or R.
It's on
It is on the board?
Shit, what's line 4?
I was just curious about line 4.
So looking at line 4 now?
Well, just the justification for it is 1 and 2 and conjunction. Is that right?
Oh, for line 4.
Right, thanks. Conjunction of
1 and 2.
1 and 2. And this is just from 3, because I just took that and distribution allows me to take,
like terms out of the equations.
yeah, how would you express that? Yeah,
It's like terms out of the equation and put it outside the parentheses.
thanks, excellent. In fact, if I spoke Spanish, I would say muy excelente. But I don't, so I can't. I haven't been able to get the back row to fall apart laughing yet tonight.
No, you made a good one earlier.
I did?
Yep.
Yeah,
Nathan
polar
died
bear-
last
polar bear-
week.
Polar bear one?
Yep, that was a good one. That was worth the price of admission alone.
I'm gonna use that.
Okay, so we've got this distribution. Where were we going with that? That's gonna give us this, right? how, oh, okay. Because now we're all set for constructive dilemma, CD. Constructive dilemma between this is the antecedent of this side, so I'm gonna have L or M. Or the conclusion of this side, not R. Right? Constructive dilemma from 4 and 5. Which is what we were looking to get. That was just 4. These problems get harder the higher up they go. Should we try 22?
Why don't you do it? Write it down.
22. This is page 425, problem 22. Not the case P and Q. Not the case, parentheses, not the case P and not R. 3. R or S, then not the case L or M. The conclusion is not the case M or L. So not the case M or L is what we want to get out of there. M or L is right here, not the case M or L. We just have to commute this. And by the way, you can use commutation within a line. So even though this is all inside of here, I can already just go R or S, then not the case, and commute
M or L,
this. So
okay.
M or L.
So as long as we're doing it within that parentheses, you can.
Right, right. In fact, I could have commuted this one.
Yeah.
This, don't make the mistake of commuting a conditional sign. You know, I can't flip this to here. I can use transposition for that, but we haven't learned that one yet. But when we get to the next set of replacement rules, that's one. But there's an additional feature to that, and that is that you have to negate both sides when you do that. Okay, but so now this commutation on 3, just to get that out of the way. So we already have that sitting there. Somehow we have to get this already by itself, which means I have to get this, R or S. So here's R or S. Well, that's the same. So where did we get R or S? S is not
That's just part of it.
sitting any place anywhere else. We have not the case P and Q. I'm clearly going to have to get R by itself so that I can add S, and then I'll be able to get that.
What you do on 2, it's P and R, because it's a double negative on both of them, so you have P and R, which is addition.
Wrong for me, this is what I
So
can do.
you have R by itself.
So you would have.
We can use De Morgan's on this.
That's what she's saying.
That's what you were saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's first you have, you have
nothing
Two
else.
knots make it a P. Oh, you got a knot.
I want not P, right?
Not P is P, and not.
Or not R.
No, it's and.
Well, if I'm using De Morgan's,
You switched it.
So did you use De Morgan's and distribution? Like all in the same go?
for here,
Yes.
no, I'm trying to use just De Morgan's, right? De Morgan's will tell me that if I have not the case P and Q, that's equivalent to having not the case P or not the case Q,
Okay.
right?
That would be,
And so I'm bringing the negation sign in.
Okay.
That means that I have now two negation signs here. Because I had one before, and I'm adding another one, so I have two negations. The conjunction becomes a disjunct, and again, I have two negation signs here. That's also P or R. You can think of it as P or R.
P or R, whereas P R or S
That makes sense to me.
on three.
Yeah, I don't get
So the rule for 5 then would be De Morgan's, and then you can say P or R as a double negation, right? From 5 to make it P or R. I don't know why you'd want to do that.
To make it P or R, how is P or R gonna help me yet?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
But I have P here,
I'm just not understanding.
so let me take P from here,
Written just like that.
because that's a conjunction, I can take that out, that's simplification on one.
That's why I'm clicking now, just not get it. It's like something isn't clicking.
And this is not P, which means I have this, because this is the negation of this. Right? And if I have disjunctive syllogism, it says, well, you have, so what are
So
the
that's
things we
why
could
you
do?
would use double negation.
Double negation there
right.
first?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
To make it a little
So
clearer.
let's have P
Or
R, double negation.
Then
Are
you
we
can say that
cheating
you
by
have.
doing it on both sides at the same time?
Are you?
We might be,
Would
but
that be a
we could
double
have just
negation?
doubled it. But now that means that disjunctive
have
syllogism,
R.
I have R, disjunctive syllogism on 6 and 7.
And then you can say R or S because of addition.
Right.
And now we have the R or S.
So 10. Gives me not the case M or L.
Yeah,
Which is what we were looking for. And how did we get that? We got
We
that
got
by
that.
modus ponens.
Number 4. Number 4.
4 and 9. Da dum dum, da dum dum, da dum dum, da dum.
I think like Rocky.
Yes, exactly.
Maybe I'm doing them animal ideas, but.
How could I even find where that is?
Rocky theme song?
Yeah, I find the Rocky theme song, but I've videoed myself running up the steps in front of the,
I've been to that museum.
yeah. I even wore, I wore the right outfit with the blue hat, the sneakers. And as I ran up, I did the thing. Well, you didn't have to make your own music because there was a vendor down at the bottom that was playing music, selling trinkets and stuff. Rocky, they have the statue there. They took a statue of Ben Franklin away to put that one there. So a real hero was replaced by.
Did you go to the Eastern State Penitentiary when you were in Philadelphia?
You mean how long did I live there?
No. Did you actually go like to the site of the Eastern State
No.
Penitentiary?
No.
It's pretty awesome. Where Al Capone was in jail. It was a great
I know.
restaurant right across the street.
So, how are we doing? Should we move on to the next? Oh, why do I have this one here?
I don't like that reaction.
So this is a word problem. If you have a good retirement plan, then you do not need to worry about inflation. If you either have a good retirement plan or you make wise investments, or else you plan to work for a long time. If you either make wise investments or you plan to work for a long time, then you do not need to borrow money later in life. Therefore, who the heck's going to lend you money later in life? Nobody. Therefore, it is not the case that you need to worry about inflation and you need to borrow money later in life. You get to use letters R, I, W, L, and B. This is problem 4 on page 427. So if you have a good retirement plan, then you do not need to worry about inflation. You either have a good retirement plan or else you plan to work for a long time.
Or you make wise investments.
Or you make wise
Yeah,
investments.
where's the investment?
Or else you plan on working for a long time. If you either make wise investments, or else you plan to, wait a minute. If you either make wise investments, or you plan to work for a long time, then you do not need to borrow money later in life. Therefore, it is not the case that you need
Word I, inflation.
to worry about inflation. And you need to borrow money later in life.
Now, quick question. Why would you not just make that not
Not I.
apply to the inflation
Yeah.
instead of both? Because it's only saying that you don't need to worry about inflation and then you need to borrow money later in life.
That's how I read it too. I think it says you do need to borrow money. Because the alternative is earlier, it says you do not have to borrow money.
You could go either way on this, I guess.
The
The
problem
trouble
is,
with
yeah, the problem with it is that
everyday speech.
if you only have the not on the I and not on the B, then you can't use the distribution to put it on both, like you can right now. If you take the parentheses out and make it look like the not just is associated with the I, or inflation, then you can't use distribution later.
How did I do this? Let's see, I've got, hold that in
Yeah.
mind here. So 4 would be our first step. And I used association on 2. To get it to look like this.
Right.
Then I used 1 and 3 conjunction.
You're gonna need brackets.
Yes. That's conjunction.
And then you can just put in the
Can I have,
W or L.
have the R,
And, yeah.
I have the W or L, so that gives me not I. Four. Not B, right? Not I or not B, right?
Using,
Constructive dilemma on 5.
and if you use Morgan on the next one, you can switch the or to and.
And the Morgans, right,
Captain Morgan's
Right.
wind up with the not out here, I
and
and B.
6 in Morgan.
So that's why I put it this way,
Uh-huh.
so that I could end up with it right from this to that. And when you put it is not the case in front of, where does it go in front of in everyday speech? Because we're not really very precise how we say it. But yeah, it could be interpreted either way. But I don't know if this would solve if you did it that way. But I had that one written in the margin, the only one,
Okay.
so I must have had trouble with that one. I bet you that's why it was. So, replacement rules, part 2. This is sort of not anticlimactic. What's it when it's building up to the climax? Don't we have a word for that?
I'm thinking.
Anticlimactic is, oh, it's over, right? Because once we get these, we're all set for the test, except for practice. Does that make sense?
Usually gets a crescendo before the.
Right, that's the word I was thinking of too. That's musical. What that would still apply?
I don't know what it's called though when there's got to be a word for it when you're building up to the climax.
Anticipation.
That's a good song too. Okay, so transposition. I mentioned this a couple times. You can't use commutation for this, but if I do have a conditional statement, I can transpose them because it turns out that if P then Q is equivalent to, if not Q, then not P. See, that's pretty snazzy. And we have material implication. P then Q. That's also equivalent to not the case P or Q. I used that, remember when we were talking about Mom saying if you clean your room, then you can go out. That works out to if you don't clean your room or you go out, and since it's inclusive, you can simply just go out. Annoy the heck out of Mom. She says, hey, I told you to clean your room. And you said I could, if I clean my room, I could go out. And Mom says, well, but you didn't clean your room. So, you gave me the choice. No. You'd get, depends on whether your mom believes in corporal punishment.
Yeah.
Which is something that we don't approve of anymore. But material implication, that's very, very useful. Notice because while transposition enables you to switch sides, you're still using a conditional. But here, if you want to get rid of that conditional statement and turn it into something else, there you are. There's your opportunity. Material equivalence. It's a foot-long thing. P, if and only if Q is equivalent to if P then Q and if Q then P. And there's a separate way of doing it. Both of these are equivalent. And in fact, a nice thing about this is you can actually go into this and then into that. So you can change things all around. P and Q. I either have them both or not the case P and not the case Q. So I either have them both or I don't have either. Because they're equivalent. So they're both true or they're both false. Or likewise, if the one, then the other, and if the other, then the one. So that's material equivalence, or equiv, E-Q-U-I-V. Just two more. Exportation. So P and Q then are. That's equivalent to saying Notice it could go either way. Last one is really silly. Tautology. Says if I have P, it's equivalent to saying I have P as many times as I want to say it. P for P. Likewise, I could use conjunction. So we're up to the set of exercises where the next test comes from. Although, of course, we start off with easy ones. A couple of easy ones. And then we get to the test. Remember, the test comes from exercise chapter 8, IV, or 4. Always gives me a kick when folks write the 10 Commandments and use Roman numerals for them. Because, of course, they didn't have Roman numerals when Moses went up the hill. If you think about it. He didn't use Roman numerals. For the 15 Commandments, remember? Oh, I mean the 10 Commandments. He dropped the one. That's Mel Brooks. Right?
You're gonna mention 3 with George Carlin, right?
Oh, yeah, he broke, well,
He just consolidated.
yeah. Actually, he disagreed with some of them outright. So what we could do next class, or we continue to do now if you're up to it, totally up to you. We can do the following proofs, page 435, work with some. Or next class, what we could do is start off by practicing and doing a bunch of the exercises from this exercise itself up until you guys feel you're ready for the test, and then I can give you the test questions.
It sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that.
I think that's,
Do that one?
How long are you gonna give us for the test?
it'll be fresher.
How many?
No, how long are you gonna give us for the test?
I usually give like an hour, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I have like 7 problems to do.
Okay, and is that the final? Well, that's not the final.
No, that's test 3. Test 4 is already posted actually though.
Yeah.
Does this look doable?
We'll find out. I don't know if you guys want to pass on my email address. See that girl on the phone want to.
Yeah.
I use my phone to make PDFs out of the textbook. And she just wants to tell me what pages she wants or what chapters or whatever she needs.
Well, she doesn't have the book, so she's not going to read.
I know, but if she has a syllabus, so she can say, hey, I need chapter X, Y, Z, and do it up.
I know, I saw you.
I have marked out already 7 problems that I typically use. They're not the hardest, but they're not the easiest. Yes, same as last time. You don't want to do me, that's for sure. I mean, I'm thinking every
I
year.
don't even know, like,
You I'll do that.
Do some serious
Although
YouTube on
it's just
Academy.
email it.
Try and figure that shit out. I don't have your phone number.
We'll have the last class. We'll try to cover as much of the last chapter.
If I find
Earlier
a
with
couple
the
links,
material,
then you
no, I'm not going, well, actually, some of the. Cover it before you have. We'll figure it out. That's, well, you do have up until August 4th.
What'd you do?
So you have days after the last class.
I used to run quite a bit in that. All my cardio comes from riding my bike.
It's still recording.